Hi, Cindy with Uniquely Cindy here. I wanted to stop in and say hello and wanted to share a funny story and some thoughts with you. Sunday night, I had fallen asleep watching a craft show on the couch, and about 5 o'clock in the morning, I heard this big commotion. And I honestly thought somebody had broken into the house or my cat was terrorizing the place because I heard crash, bam, slam. I heard what I thought was glass breaking. And I jumped up off the couch, and my first looks went toward the monitor because I heard what I thought was all this glass breaking. And I thought my cat's gotten up there on the credenza and knocked my monitor over. And my monitor was fine. Now my lights are off, so I'm going by the monitor light. And all of a sudden behind me, I heard crash, crash, crash again. And so I swung around. I have an elongated living room, and one end's living room, and the other end I've got a little breakfast area. And I looked behind me thinking the cat was on the table, knocking stuff off my table. But as I turned, my cat was on the back of my couch, all arched up, terrified. And my bird was going crazy in his birdhouse. And I'm going, what in the world has gotten into my house? Actually, I told my mama I was wondering what demon had walked in because it was just that loud and that noiseful. And I kept hearing all this noise, and I'm sitting here going, what in the world is that coming in my house? And so I made it over to the end table beside my husband's chair, and I opened the drawer and I pulled out the ceiling fan light switch, like remote control. I'll get it right in a minute. I pulled out the remote control and I cut the light on my ceiling fan, and I was looking at the floor when I cut it on, and all over the floor is all this, what I thought at the moment was insulation. I said, oh my word, my ceiling has caved in. And I looked up to the ceiling, and my ceiling looked fried, but as I'm panning the ceiling, I happened to look up into my ceiling fan, and in my ceiling fan was a Mylar balloon. Now, the Mylar balloon was about twice this size. It was my daughter's balloon, and this is just a little Mylar pick. But it was in that ceiling fan, and it was going vroom, vroom, vroom. But every time it would hit that crinkly material, it sounded like glass breaking. So then I got frustrated, and I was trying to figure out how in the world that Mylar balloon got into my living room anyhow, because for the last 3 weeks, it had been under a cubby hole in my kitchen. My little girl would take it out in the day, play with the cat with it, and then put it back under that cubby hole. Matter of fact, it wasn't floating past waist high. So how it got in my living room and into my ceiling fan, only you and me and God, or I don't even know, neither does you. Only God knows, because I hadn't figured that one out yet. And so I reach up and I tried to get this Mylar balloon down. And as I'm reaching for the Mylar balloon, I lost my balance, fell back onto the table, and landed on the corner of that table right on my tailbone. And that didn't feel too good. So I jump up again, and I'm trying to grab that stupid Mylar balloon, and it hit me. Dummy, cut off the fan. So I reached down and get the remote control again, because our fan is done by remote control only. You can't do it with the light switch. And I cut off that ceiling fan. And as I cut the ceiling fan off, the Mylar balloon started floating down to the ground. And I grabbed that balloon because by this time I was thoroughly frustrated. And I grabbed that balloon, and I go in the kitchen, and I'm holding that balloon, and I open the kitchen drawer, and I pulled out one of my steak knives, and I just jabbed the balloon and let all what was left of air out of that Mylar balloon. And I said, if this don't beat all, I said, this balloon is set in my kitchen for the last 3 weeks, behind the trash can, under the cubby hole. And how it got out, I don't know. My cat was terrified. My bird was terrified. My precious daughter and my precious husband slept through the whole catastrophe. And so that was kind of funny. But I got there and I was thinking about that Mylar balloon. And that Mylar balloon was like things that come up in our lives. They're things that we get so frustrated with. We get so aggravated with, when really all we got to do is remove the irritation. And we need to learn to just remove some irritations out of our lives. Could that situation have been prevented? Yes, Mylar balloons and ceiling fans do not get along. And so if I'd have just went ahead and gotten rid of the Mylar balloon after it started deflating and it was no longer floating, no longer tied to the back of the kitchen chair, if I'd have just went ahead and got rid of it, that would have never happened. There's things that come in our lives that we know we don't need to be entertaining, that we know don't need to be part of our social group, that we know we don't need to be including in our life. It's not conducive to a walk a positive walk with the child of God. But we let it stay until it gets to an irritating point. And when it reaches that irritating point, we're just so frustrated we don't know what else to do. And we let it become a fear factor in our lives. When if we'll just take control and remove that situation. One thing that it taught me that night, don't fight with Mylar balloons. It's not worth the effort. Me falling and getting hurt wasn't worth the effort of fighting with a Mylar balloon. Cut off the source of the aggravation. And if we'll apply that to our daily lives, in our daily spiritual walk with God, and in the company we keep, and the things we ingest in our minds, and things that we read, and the things that we do, places that we go, there are negative impacts in this world today. I was reading on Facebook, and I had to laugh because it was really quite funny. I like crime documentaries and all. And somebody posted, I had to shut the news off and watch a documentary on a serial killer just to relax. There are so many negative influences in our world today that we let the little things that really is not part of our lives, shouldn't be part of our lives to begin with, but we let them irritate us to the point that we lose our joy, we lose our self-respect, we lose our peace of mind, and it eats at us until we can no longer handle day-to-day activities, and we start withdrawing into ourselves, which within itself is dangerous. You know, the Bible tells us, forsake not the assembling of ourselves together, and we're admonished to not forsake ourselves from being together, because we're supposed to be an encouragement to each other, especially as we see the day approaching. And we know this world is in turmoil right now, and what better place to be than in the center of the body of Christ, in the center of God's will, doing God's work. And we become a barrier protecting each other from the irritants of the Mylar balloons. So you have a unique day. It was a unique experience in my house, and I'm so thankful to know it wasn't a demon that walked in my house. It wasn't a burglar. It wasn't my cat tearing my house apart. It was just a silly little Mylar balloon that all I had to do was deflate and throw it in the trash. So you deflate the Mylars in your life and have a closer walk with God. Have a unique day. Bye.